What's up, guys? We're here today to talk about the basics of budgeting and how to make that budget budge. I'm Justin Frazier, Community Outreach Coordinator at CSE Federal Credit Union.
And I'm Tim Plaza, the marketing guy, one of anyway. So here to talk to Justin today about, like he said, budgeting your budget, making your money work for you, high level tips and tricks to making sure you know where your money's going. What are some reasons that budgets often fail? Let's explore that today and educate.
Well, a lot of times when we talk about budgets, just like New Year's resolutions, what I find is that they never even make it past the ideation phase. So what I mean by that is that a lot of people have the idea, but there's no plan behind it. So you wake up, you're ready to do your budget, it sounds good, but you never actually sit down to do it. So a lot of times the reason they fail is because you have no plan behind it. And that comes with the premise of people thinking budgets need to be this complicated thing. It needs to be a rocket science thing. It's going to be this special algorithm. And I often tell our members and people in the community, just start somewhere. I'm a huge fan of a rough draft. Not sure if kids still do this in school, but a rough draft is great because it allows you to get started. And it doesn't look pretty, but you kind of get some motivation, some movement, and the key is just starting.
So that said, you always talk about how to make the most of every dollar. Make sure every dollar is working for you, that you know where it's going.
Yes.
And there's a lot of different ways to accomplish that.
Yeah.
Why don't we start with what a traditional budget could look like?
The first thing you need to know is what's coming in, your income. And when we talk about income, we're talking about your net income. So a lot of times when you're working, you got your insurance coming out, you got taxes coming out. You need to be really focused on what drops into your account. So once you get what drops into your account, you're gonna take that if you get paid weekly, bi-weekly, whatever the case, and sum that up for the month. That's gonna be your income. So for round numbers, let's say you make $1,000 every 2 weeks and it drops into your account. Well, you got $2,000 of monthly income. Then guess what you need to find out next? It's simple. You need to find out what's going out. So what bills are you paying? So your obligations that need to be paid. And the tricky part about that is that, yes, we all know we have rent, car payments, electric, gas, but here's where the finesse comes in. You need to understand what other expenses are you paying that you're obligated to. So your credit cards, making sure that you have those wrote down. What is that automatic payment that comes out every month? Daycare expenses. So that's kind of where the tracking piece starts, and it's really crucial. Now the next part is the most crucial part ever. It's what I call your adult allowance, which is also known as your discretionary income. That's what's left over. So you got your income, you got your expenses, then you got what's left over. The reason why that's so important is because adults need to know, what do I have within a month that I can withstand that if my car breaks down for $500, what's my number? So if you know your discretionary income is $1,000 left over and your car breaks down, you might be able to handle that because you have about $1,000 of discretionary income for you to use. Now, you got to consider things like if you didn't wrap groceries in there, dining out, that Starbucks coffee you had to have. That's where you start to get into the details. But just starting there, what's coming in, what's going out, and what's left over is what I tell people.
So you covered a lot there, and there's when it's good, it's good.
Yeah.
When you got the money coming in, more so than what's going out, it's easy to keep to a budget.
Yeah.
What about the emotional side of things? You obviously deal with a lot of people in your counseling role that when things get hard, it gets hard. How do you handle the emotional side of the budget?
The thing about budgets is that I talked about you got to start. And when I talk about starting a budget, it doesn't mean setting it and forgetting it. You got to revisit it. I often tell people you got to get intimate with your budget. You got to get to know her a little bit, right? And the reason why I say that is because as you get to know your budget, you get to find some of those triggers. For some people, they don't realize they're every morning going to get that favorite coffee that costs them $7 to $10. or that when they had a stressful day at work, they're spending $20 on lunches just to cope with it. So when we talk about the emotional side, there's a lot of emotion that comes behind finances. And a lot of those emotions that I see when I'm helping members are sometimes anxiety, fear. A lot of people have fear of actually facing their finances. Maybe there's debt that was racked up and it's easier not to look at it. So we're just going to go in it with the blinders on and say, hey, I'm not going to actually look at how much debt I have because I'm scared of it. So when you actually go into it, there's so many emotions. Loneliness. Sometimes you find that people are trying to fill a void and it takes money to fill that void. So they're maybe doing things that they shouldn't, such as gambling. Gambling is a huge one right now. And you start to see that there's layers to the finances and it comes with the emotions that are brought about. So that's why you got to get to know it a little bit, and the more you know, you start to discover things about yourself, and you kind of got to work through that.
Keeping up with the Joneses is a real thing. Your friends are going out on a Friday night, Saturday night to do whatever, and you want to keep up. You don't have the money. That adds to that emotional stress and, to your point, loneliness at times.
You know, that's a good point, Tim, because I often say comparison is not only the thief of joy, it's also the thief of your money. And what I mean by that is you're out there comparing yourself to others, like, oh, they just got a new car. I deserve a new car.
I got to get the car.
You know, and it's like, yeah, but is the timing right? What is your goal and your budget? And, you know, I talk about starting somewhere, but the goal, and we'll talk a little bit more about this later, is so important. Understanding where you're going with your budget. And that's why it's so important to revisit that budget, because you're going to need to make those adjustments. You're going to need to be able to adapt. And you got to make sure that you keep your eye on your prize, because you start looking at others and you start looking at this and you start to have that emotion behind it, and all of a sudden you find yourself getting angry at, well, how did they get that? I deserve that. And that's not a good place to be, because what you're finding is your energy is going into why do they have, instead of figuring out how you can get it. So emotions is a big part of the finance piece.
So you might have already actually just answered this next question, but you talk about the emotional baggage and how it can impact you mentally, especially, and lead you to making bad financial decisions. What are some of the factors that keep you from progressing and making progress and sticking to a budget?
Yeah.
Especially on the mental or emotional side of things.
You know, some of the biggest barriers is failing to understand. So failing to understand those triggers, understanding why you're doing the things you're doing. So if you're out gambling, why are you doing that? Is it because you have anxiety? You feel like the financial side of things is overwhelming? Once you start to understand the reasoning behind it, then you can start to come up with a solution. But a lot of times people aren't asking the key question, why? Why am I doing this?
Yeah.
And where am I going? So, you know, when we do financial counseling at CSE, we often sit down and we say, you know, we're back here again. Let's talk a little bit more why we're here again. And I find that our members find there's a lot of value in understanding, why did I do that again? What is really triggering me to go back out there and buy that Starbucks coffee after I told myself I wouldn't do that? Finances, I often say, is so much more than the numbers. It's the behaviors. And if we can get an understanding of how to tell ourselves one of the hardest things ever, no. You thought it was hard to tell your kids no, try telling yourself no. And I often find that sometimes we have financial temper tantrums, right? So you take your finances and you're so upset, you just go out there, you're on a spending spree. You don't even know how you got there. You're in the store. You just spent $500. You're like, what am I doing? So finances is one of those things that we're always going to have to be involved with in our lives. And you have to get an understanding of the triggers that trigger you and how to get a wraps around it. So, you know, people don't often think that there's emotions behind it, behavioral, but there's a lot of that. So,
Yeah, all good stuff. Some of the things that we deal with here at the credit union, obviously you're dealing with it as a counselor, but we're all real people here too. So we've talked to some of our staff And here's a better perspective from some of our employees on how a budget can impact them or how they deal with budgeting situations and issues. So let's take a look.
So I wouldn't say necessarily that budgeting is hard for me on a personal level, because I do obviously budget out like my bills every 2 weeks for like mortgage, car, credit card payments, things like that. And I always have extra money left over, but because I want to do stuff for my kids that I didn't have when I was younger, there goes my savings. So the money I could save and put into like budgeting for savings, I use it on my kids.
Budgeting is the easy part for me because I like to utilize the tools of auto pay and reminders on my calendar for when bills are due. The hard part for me is being a single parent when unexpected things in life happen. I have to be the one to figure out where those funds are coming from. So also setting up an auto pay to having, a small amount of funds go into a different type of savings account, I can utilize those during that time.
I ain't got no money. I have all my bills paid and everything's taken care of like majorly, and I'm good for another month, but then I don't have like any savings to show for it. Like, yeah, I do all of the fun things and we plan stuff with the kids, and obviously we do vacations, but we budget for vacations. And then whatever I have after budgeting for those things, it's free reign for the kids, man. So that's probably the hardest part, is just saving money and leaving it alone. My budget may personally look different than the next person's budget because of what they may have personally going on in their life. However, like moving forward for me, I still do technically budget. It's just a matter of the additional funds that I have left over that I spend on my kids. I just need to, moving forward, work on actually putting that stuff back and also still have the money to do the fun things that I want to do with them.
First and foremost, thank you to our employees for sharing their point of view, our credit union point of view. And as you probably heard, there's a lot of noise, or what I like to call budget disruptors. If it's kids, if it's unexpected expenses, those are all things that disrupt your budget. The key is to have a plan at once you realize that's disrupting your budget, how can I get through it? So if you find that, family is a piece of it, that, I always got to help that one family member. One thing that I've always done is I said, I have a family fund that I fund for about $30 every 2 weeks. So that I know if a family member needs something, I have this fund that I can go to and say, I can help within my financial truth. And when we talk about living within your financial truth, we're talking about, unfortunately, money doesn't grow on trees. Everybody has a limit. And it's okay to say, I have a limit and this is what I can do. And the reason why that's important is because you can't pour into somebody else if you've already poured out everything you've had. And that comes with your finances too. So you gotta understand your financial truth, what your goals are with your budget, and if you find those disruptors, come up with a plan. And if you can't come up with a plan, that's when you're gonna call one of your fellow credit union folks and say, is that guy down there that does the financial counseling? I might need to talk to him a little bit. Or if you have a friend that is great with finances, lean into him. Lean into what I like to call your fin friend, your financial friend. It's just something about having someone to help you think through something.
Yeah.
You know how it is to have support. I don't care in what you do, if it's running, if it's going to, on a new and just having that support often will help you think just a little bit better.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Having some sort of somebody to bounce ideas off of, just keep you on the straight and narrow, lead you on the right path, or just tell you, hey, that's a bad idea.
Yeah.
It's important, definitely important.
Sometimes you need that perspective.
So you talked a lot about financial truths and staying true to your budget. What are some things that you can tell the viewers of how to stay true to your budget? What are some strategies, some sticking points, things for them to avoid? How do they do that? How do I do that?
Yeah, first off, we're continue to learn. Nobody's perfect. We're all continuing to learn. Your budget is meant to guide you. It isn't meant to be rigid or staticky. So be gracious with yourself. Start somewhere. And a couple things that I often tell our members is automate your success. So if you have credit cards and you know your credit is what you're working towards, why not automate those minimum payments? That's going to take the decision fatigue out of it, and you know that that's at least handled. So then when life comes at you with a decision that needs to be made outside of the necessarily monthly bills, you can really focus in on that because you know for the most part everything is covered that needs to be covered. I did that about 15 years ago now, and it was the best thing I ever did because at the end of the day I know everything is at least paid and it's automated, and all I have to do now is kind of see where I can pay off maybe the credit cards in full depending on what I'm working towards in my budget. That's another thing. Your budget is meant to be tailored to you. You can't use Tim's budget because Tim's budget isn't going to work for me and Justin's budget isn't going to work for the next person. Your budget needs to work for you. That's why you got to get intimate with your budget. It just doesn't work for you to sit down once and think that's going to be the end all. I sit down monthly and I take a look at things, and I often tell people budgeting is kind of like the workout of your finances. It starts off rough, but the more you get into a routine, the easier it gets.
The less it hurts.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So like, don't take any days off, stay in that
Yeah.
gym, keep that budget going, so that way, when you sit down, you know what you're doing. You're like, okay, check, 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 I need to move a few things around, and then you know what? Things start to look clearer. You start to have a bigger picture of where you're going and how to move things around, and now you're starting to categorize things. You're starting to visualize how you can actually make your money work for you. If you've ever been in any of my other workshops, you know I always say the key is making your money work for you instead of you working for your money. And the reason I say that is because you start saving. You automate that savings. Now you got a lump sum sitting around and you're like, well, maybe I can put that into a safe investment like a certificate of deposit because it's already sitting there. Why not let it earn 4 to 6% depending on what the market rate is?
Sure.
So yeah, you find that once you start getting into budgeting, it makes it a lot easier. So it gets easier down the road because like we said, budgeting and money's not going anywhere. You're going to have to use it, so you might as well get used to it and familiar with it. Another thing that I tell people is be flexible. Your budget needs to adapt. The key is making adjustments. One thing that's going to happen is what I like to call our lifestyles start to change. And around age 30 or 40, I consider very pivotal because most people are just getting stride in their career. You're starting to make more, things are going well.
Sure.
At this point, you probably maybe had a couple kids, you're married, and you're finding that, okay, we're making good money. But be wary of lifestyle creep. Lifestyle creep is you're making more money, but as soon as that money comes in, you're spending every dollar of it. So you want to be wary of that because if you spend every dollar now, you don't necessarily secure any funds for yourself in the future.
Sure.
And a rainy day is always going to come, and we want to make sure you have those emergency funds, a 401k, and those things that you need for the future. So automate, stay flexible, be gracious with yourself, and make sure you check in regularly.
So earlier you talked about the gym, getting in there,
Yeah.
setting a goal. I'm going to cut 10 pounds. I'm going to
Yeah.
cut 20 pounds. Yet you do that.
Mhm.
You put in the work, you put in the effort, you see some results, and then you hit that plateau. What do you have to do with your budget? It's the same thing. So you get some money in savings, and all of a sudden you get some lifestyle creep. Where
Yeah.
you think, okay, well maybe now I can take that vacation. And then you do the thing, which is great.
Yeah.
How do you stay motivated to stay on track and keep that goal moving forward and make sure you're not losing sight of the big picture of whatever that goal is for you, whether that's retirement or to hit a specific target? How do you stay motivated throughout the process?
That's a great question, Tim. And I think the key to that is understanding that you're getting stagnant So the first part is just saying, you know what?
Realization
Yeah.
that, you know what, I got so far and it hasn't grown as
Yeah.
much as I thought it would the last
I'm
2
a little
weeks, the last
complacent.
month.
Yeah. And you take a look. You get back to that drawing board. You sit down and you go, okay, let's look at those finances. I'm a little stagnant. Where can I work on? And then you gotta give yourself small goals. Don't discount the small stuff. I often tell my members or people in the community, it's the richness lives in the small stuff, right? I told my coworkers, in order for me to sharpen my discipline principle, I started running, and I was like, I'll never be able to run a 5K. Well, I ran a 5K, and I was like, whoa, where did that come from? And then all of a sudden I ran 2 half marathons, and I often lead back to tell them, it took every step to run 13.1 miles.
Sure.
For you in budgeting, it takes every step, even the mistakes, to understand how to make your budget more efficient. So when you find yourself getting stagnant, recognize that. Give yourself a new goal to achieve, and once you achieve that self, award yourself. So don't make it so rigid to where you feel uncomfortable and the budget's not sustainable. If you do good for a month, reward yourself. Maybe you take yourself out to dinner. Maybe you start saving for a vacation to where after 3 months you take a small vacation with your family. Your budget's going to tell you what it will allow for you to reward yourself, but the key is to make sure you make it fun. Me and my friend, we often call each other at least once a month, and we get on the horn and we're like, look, where are you at? Are you where you need to be, and are you happy with those results? And if not, why? So just making sure you're following up with that financial friend, and you get on the phone and you start, oh, I didn't do as good this month because X. Or, you know what, I'm pretty proud of myself. And, have someone there that's going to motivate you. And the one thing I always tell you, be able to pick yourself up. A lot of times you're waiting around for someone to say, you can do it, but there's nothing better than showing up for yourself. So get in a quiet room, even if it's for 10 minutes, and say, look, you got this. Let's get to it for the better of my family, for the better of myself, because I want to be the person that I aspire to be. And the only way to get there is in those small steps.
Awesome. You covered a lot today in this conversation. I don't even want to call it a workshop. It's a conversation. It's funny. I'm thinking as you're talking, the OJs obviously are from here in Canton, and they got that song "Money, Money, Money." You're talking about Justin about budget. Tie it all together. Any final thoughts for you for staying true to the mission of setting yourself up for better financial success?
Yeah. No matter where you're at, start somewhere. The key is you gotta start. A lot of times the enemy of procrastination gets to us. I'll start tomorrow. Tomorrow becomes a month later.
Yeah. Tomorrow today.
Yeah.
Right.
And then a month becomes a year. So get serious. Get your mind right. You gotta have that mindset and start somewhere. And say, today is the day I start moving towards my financial freedom. And when I talk about financial freedom, it's the ability to have a choice. If someone, your family or your kids want to take you on vacation and they're like, can you go? It is such an empowering thing to say, you know what, I can. And for you to have that choice to say yes. And that's when we talk about the financial freedom of things. Because the one thing that money still can't buy is time. And the longer we procrastinate, the less time we have to enjoy the fruits of your labor. So I often tell people, just start. It's progress over perfection. You're going to make some mistakes, but that's okay. We'll work through them. If you don't know where to start, give us a call. Give us a call down at CSE. My name is Justin Frazier. I'm the Community Outreach Coordinator. I'd be happy to get you hooked up with either myself or someone that's going to be able to assist you. And that's the beautiful thing about credit unions, is that we have these resources available for our community so that people can reach their financial goals, no matter who you are. That's the thing. My job is very much, I want to see everybody win. And if I can give you just one tip that gets you that much closer to your financial goal, then we've done what we're here to do.
Just know that you are not the only one battling budget issues.
Yeah.
You talk to people all day, every day about reaching your financial goals. So Justin, thank you for this conversation,
For sure.
for the tips, the tricks. We hope you got a nugget or two out of this, and we'll see you on another one.
Yeah, next time. See you guys.
See ya.